This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome everybody to this week's edition of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John McEnroe. Joining me as always, my guy Adam, the Jock Strozinski. And boy, 4 days of training camp have been spectacular. The buzz, the hype surrounding the Detroit Lions is real. Lots of television cameras, even from as far as Grand Rapids. Lots of television cameras, lots of coverage. A lot of people want to check in with the Detroit Lions, and we got an inside look at what's been happening over the first 4 days. But, next week's podcast is the one for sure where we'll have a lot more definitive answers. No pads for the first 4 days. Acclimating, everybody getting used to the grind, getting all the information, but still a lot of information to decipher with the Detroit Lions as they start their quest to fulfill everything that they've been talking about, man. It's been great to be around football. It's, really in 5 weeks, it does go by pretty quickly. It's like I never left, but the football team has so much intrigue, so many storylines to talk about, man. It's crazy. And cause it's crazy. The first day I walked in there and the first thing I said was, and like everyone knows, everybody always has that PTSD with the Lions. And the first thing I said was, as I walked in day one, I said, please don't let Jared Goff go down with a major knee injury today, not day one. Because you could picture it, all the good news, all the hype, and then right away, first practice, Goff goes down and the season's ruined. I said, please don't let that happen. But in the end, eventually, football is a very difficult sport, tough on a lot of people, and there was a significant injury. Got to see C.J. Gardner-Johnson, a veteran free agent signing that really kind of represents the swagger of the defense. He went down. So, cuz it was a wild scene the first 4 days, but I'm thankful now the day you guys get to listen to this, we'll have a day to relax. The players get a day off, and we can kind of recap a little bit of a lot of things in regards to what we've seen.
Yeah, man, there's a whole lot going on surrounding this team, and this podcast specifically is going to be very Lions-focused as training camp, like you said, just got underway. We're going to touch on Emmanuel Mosley and the PUP list. There was a trade that took place with Brad Holmes being at the center of it, going out trying to grab a wide receiver. So we knew they weren't done there, and they proved us right that they weren't done there. And Dan Campbell spoke, and it looks like the Lions aren't done adding players as they had a quarterback in town. So we're going to touch on all of that. But like you said, you've been there. You've taken in the first couple days of training camp. You did get to see, arguably, the quarterback of that defense go down with an injury. You were right there when it happened. You went in and you were hoping that Jared Goff wouldn't get hurt, but another quarterback, the quarterback, like I said, of the defense, goes down, and it appeared as though he might have been done for the year. Kind of walk us through what happened with C.J. Gardner-Johnson and kind of just your initial reaction and how shocked you were, because when this news came out, I was at work. I looked down at my phone, and I was like, of course. I was like, same old Lions. Like, anytime you get a nice new shiny toy, it's always broken. Something bad happens. It just somehow ends up where it just turns out to bite you in the butt. Seems like the Lions avoided a little bit of that, so maybe not same old Lions, but it's like you said, you do have that PTSD when you do get something nice and something happens. It just kind of resorts you back to all those old feelings, brings up all those old emotions. And like I said, you were there. So walk us through what took place and kind of how it all played out. And then we get the report where he's just day to day. It's not so bad. So it's not as bad as we initially thought, but kind of walk us through. I believe that took place, on Monday?
Yeah. So
walk us through through Monday when CJ goes down.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. In years past, they used to put us in bleachers, and you were far away. You couldn't see nothing. Now with the new regime, it's so much more relaxed. You can walk by the field and nearly basically within, basically 30 feet of the sideline. So you got to be careful. You got to make sure you pay attention because you start daydreaming a little bit. You could get on the wrong end of a tackle from a player. But, they've allowed us now to have access when there's no fans to both sides of the field. So I was standing literally maybe 6 yards behind the sideline. And, with training camp, there's so much going on with the offense and the defense. You're always trying to get your head on a swivel so you can kind of jot down all your notes. And all of a sudden, a play happens, and I'm looking right at it. C.J. Gardner-Johnson is making a move, an athletic move to cut, to try and, just make an athletic move toward Jahmyr Gibbs, who got the ball. And all of a sudden, he goes down. And you're like, oh, what happened? And at first, many people thought it was non-contact because everything's going so fast, because he just went down and he starts like punching his knee. And it was just, everyone was like, uh-oh. And then, he was just, you could tell right away from everyone looking. Like literally, I am straight on looking at C.J. Gardner-Johnson as he's on the ground. He's like writhing in pain. He's not happy. And he's punching his knee, and all of a sudden, basically everything stopped for like maybe 4 seconds. A couple players came over, and everyone's kind of looking like, what happened? And then literally 10 seconds later, they go on to the next play. But, for me, I stopped really watching the rest of the practice, and for another 3 to 4 minutes, Gardner-Johnson's on the ground, teammates are coming over to him, and then the cart comes out. So for me, the first thought naturally is, oh, he's done for the year. You look at other reporters, and they're like, oh, this is ACL. No doubt, this is done.
Yeah, sounds like it was an ACL for sure.
Everybody, I asked, because you don't assume, and you can't say that in a report. All you can say is a leg injury. And so you look at it, and he looked bummed out. He looked like somebody that was going to leave the field for the last time. So that part took slow. And my initial thought, just to share, I went like a fan. I was like, fuck. My brain went to like, this sucks. And it was like, man, the quarterback of the defense, you're facing the Chiefs first game. Aaron Glenn's trying to turn this defense around. Everybody was just disappointed because really what kind of heightened the sense that it was bad was 2 players went over and kind of gave him that support, like, we got you, it's all good. And then they carted him off. And then I got to be honest, for me, the rest of the practice, I wasn't into it because obviously you got to get the report out. So the second that the practice ends, literally the second that the practice ended, our report went out at All Lions. And we had it. I communicated effectively how to report it in an honest and fair way. And then you're just waiting to see, like, okay, he's done for the year. My mind goes to who's going to replace him. Well, you got Tracy Walker. He can make plays. You got others, Brian Branch can come in. You're like, you know what? You're not going to have the same swagger, but you got 2 guys maybe that could replace him. So it was just really a down mood. Everybody was just kind of in that mode. And then literally the craziest tweet that came out there was, I think it was Tom Pelissero had a source, and he's like, well, after review, he's fine. And we were like, everybody in the media was like, from what the hell we just saw, how does that equate to he's fine? And it just came out that there was no structural damage. Dan Campbell, it was crazy because afterwards, like I said, literally he goes down and maybe 25 seconds later, the practice doesn't stop. They keep going as if. And Dan Campbell said, that's the mindset is, okay, my next mindset, okay, we got Will, call him up. That's what his mindset is. He's not going to stop the operation for a player, and it happens. But after, on the same day, Dan Campbell was, fairly calm. And he said, look, he said he felt like, maybe CJ overreacted a little bit, kind of got scared by what he saw, what he felt. But it was something that, Dan didn't, I was like, my initial reaction was, man, Dan's got a great poker face. He's like not letting any emotion. He's smiling, and he's like, oh yeah, so maybe he got the initial word, like it's not going to be so bad when he walked off the field. But, I look at it and I'm like, yeah, football and coaches and the team has to always have a next man up mentality because injuries happen. And so I looked at it like, man, being a fan's crazy because I looked at it like, well, you lost one of your marquee defensive players, but the team still has a couple players that if CJ was going to be gone for a long time, then you have some replacements. But we got to see him now walk off the field twice the last 2 days. On Tuesday, his limp was gnarly. But on Wednesday, it was completely different. It was a lot less, and on Tuesday, he looked like an old man that was going to be. I was like, day to day, he's not going to be back on Friday. But on Wednesday, he looked a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more happy. So probably getting the A+ treatment, the air chamber treatment, getting the blood flowing into whatever's been bothering him. So I don't think it's going to be day to day. I think maybe a week. Maybe next week he'll return. I think maybe Monday or Tuesday might be the earliest, but we'll see. These guys, they compete hard. But thankfully, the early reports are C.J. Gardner-Johnson's going to be okay. And I think the collectively, because you sensed it. The internet went crazy, like, oh, here we go again. You had that feeling. And I think it speaks to just how nervous, like everybody's hanging on by a thread with their confidence. And I would say this, the Lions can sustain 1 or 2 injuries, just not to key players. I think, CJ, you have a decent talent that could not exactly fulfill his production, but I think if there's the one player that I would say, okay, it's not going to be as devastating, it would be CJ. Otherwise, if Panay goes down, if Aiden goes down, if Jared goes down, Amon-Ra is huge. So you're like, you can't put these guys in bubble wrap, but thank goodness it's something that I think that CJ will be there game 1 against the Chiefs, because you need everybody healthy to at least have a chance game 1.
Yeah, and you really want him there, especially game 1. Because look, I'm just going to come out and say it right now. At this moment in time, barring anything crazy happening, I think the Detroit Lions have a chance to go into Arrowhead and pop the Chiefs. I think they have a legit shot to go in and get that first win on national television, kick the season off with a W, and be the talk of the town for basically 10 days. I think there's a real possibility that they do this. And in order to do this, in order to facilitate that happening, you need a guy like C.J. Gardner-Johnson out there. You need a guy who, one, is a vocal leader, a guy who basically seems like he's kind of the heartbeat of that defense, and a guy who's got that swagger, a guy who's been there, done that, a guy who has no problem getting in somebody's face and just kind of letting them know, not today. It's not happening, not against us. So I feel like he's a very integral piece to this defense. I feel like he's an integral cog to this team. And if he goes down, obviously, you've got other guys. You've got a pretty deep roster. It feels weird saying these things. You've got a pretty deep roster. The way that they've constructed this team, you've got guys who can step in. But do they step in and do they kind of carry all that extra, all those extraneous things, all those other little nuanced items that he can bring to the table? I don't think they do. So obviously, you want him on the field. You want him there. He's important. And like I said, barring anything crazy happening right now, I'm picking the Detroit Lions to win that first game in Arrowhead. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how training camp progresses. And with that being the case, you've been there. What's been your biggest takeaway from the first few days of Lions training camp?
Yeah, the offense has really looked crisp, and Ben Johnson's doing his thing, and it's really been awesome to see Amon-Ra St. Brown look. And here's the way you got to put it. You got Amon-Ra St. Brown on one end, who's a grinder, who reads everything, who uses everything as motivation to go out day in, day out. And I wrote a story at All Lions when I did my observations on Tuesday, and I said, sometimes you could take that for granted that the guy just shows up every game, every practice, and just catches the ball, is in the right spot, doesn't drop the football, makes plays. And then on the other side, you got Jameson Williams, who best way I describe it is he's in second gear trying to light it up a little bit, but he can't get into third. He can't throttle up a little bit, and then he gets hurt. And then he misses the all-day Tuesday and Wednesday, and you're just like, it is such a tale of two different type of players. And I just have to credit Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's just been a workhorse. He looks like a guy that still feels slighted, still feels like nobody likes him. And he goes out there and dominates. He looks, basically, Jared Goff is probably right when he texted Ben Johnson. He said, look, Amon-Ra is going to have a huge year. And I forecast that. It's going to be over 100 catches, probably 10 to 15 touchdowns, and a guy that's going to get a lot of first downs. So Amon-Ra St. Brown gets a star for everything going on. On the defensive side of the football, get excited.
Well, real quick, before we transition to defense.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to put you on the record, but it's at this point with Jameson Williams, is it starting to feel a little bit like just untapped potential? Like, he's got all the makings. He's a speedster. He's got the ability to do a ton of great things. He's got the ability to transform a game. But a guy who coming into his first season was injured. Only played a few games, only touched the ball twice last year. Gets suspended first 6 games this year, and kind of through practice, he's kind of nagged with another injury. And like you said, just can't seem to throttle it up. Kind of seems like he's kind of stuck in second gear and can't get going. There's a lot that surrounds him. And at a certain point, it just kind of feels, and I don't want to use the word bust, but it just kind of feels like there is some untapped potential. And maybe he gets it figured out. Maybe it all comes together a little bit later on in the season. But right now, doesn't it feel like it's just untapped? Like he just can't reach into the bag and get things going the way he needs them to go?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can ask anything you want anytime. And on record, Jameson has talent. When he is out there, when he gets the ball, he can easily... He looks like somebody that makes running look easy. But the issue is that you have another player in Ahmad St. Brown who scores 6 touchdowns in the red zone. 6! And he's getting all the targets, and he's just open. And we're all waiting to see that from Jameson, where basically Jameson gets 2 catches, and then he strikes a post for a first down, and then he misses the rest of the practice. What I'm saying is when we say go from second to third gear, we need a practice where he catches like 5-6 balls, catches a deep ball. It's something where... It feels like he's a true rookie again, and that's not what we wanted in his second year. But like many people will say, he's gonna miss the first 6 weeks anyway. So there is that fine balance of giving others targets like Khalif Raymond and now the new addition and Josh Reynolds. There is that fine balance of you still got to get the players that are going to be on the field ready. How many targets can you give Jameson Williams? But at this point, it's safe to say right now he can showcase a lot more. He needs to showcase a lot more energy, a lot more ability to get out there and want it. Basically, Amon-Ra St. Brown is acting like his check depends on every single rep. And we're not saying Jameson has to do that, but there needs to be a little bit more productivity out there on the field where he looks like he's somebody that can emerge as the number 2. Right now, he's not there yet. He still kind of has that feel. And I know, too, it is not easy. I know Jameson has talent. And he's very speedy. But just based on how everybody talks, Ben Johnson is no joke in regards to he can have 5 different plays off of one set. And Jameson's got to know exactly where he's got to be. He's got to know the checks. He's got to know exactly where Jared Goff wants it. And Amon-Ra has it with Jared, clearly. And Jameson basically, while we look at it more traditionally like, okay, you should just dominate from the step one, it doesn't work like that, especially right now, with how Ben Johnson's operating and what's going on. So it's something to keep an eye on. Still no pads, still kind of has that feel of what we call acclimating, get your legs under you. But through the first 4 days now, missed 50% of the practices, and Amon-Ra is just taking over. So Jameson has to do more. And I hope in the next week that when the pads come on and he gets back and hopefully he's okay, hopefully he starts to show something that will allow people to kind of get on his bandwagon. But right now, man, it's been slow. And yeah, second gear, he just kind of grinding in those gears from second to third, and hopefully it's different. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Because another rookie, though, from Alabama, Brian Branch, I think he's got a big hit this season for somebody. The guy likes to play physical. He knows where he needs to be. Him and Jack Campbell, I like what I'm seeing. I like Jack Campbell's speed. I like when he gets in the first team, kind of how he recognizes plays. The dude, cause it was crazy. Derek Barnes was talking to the media, and they're like, Jack's serious. And Derek's like, yeah, I know. Like when we're on the trainer's table, he's in the cafeteria. And when we're in the cafeteria, he's in the trainer's room. We can't link up as much. And he doesn't bring a phone to the locker room. So in between stuff, he's just sitting there with his head down, just thinking and being. And they're like, dude, that guy is maybe from another era. Like he just wants to play, learn, grind, and come back and do it again. So I hope he can maybe at some point, when it comes out that he's got to do his rookie performance, hopefully that'll lighten him up just a little bit. And I think the coaching staff wants him to be that way. The dude is all business. And I like that mindset, but you can crack a smile out there a little bit. I think maybe when he gets a little more comfortable, kind of feeling like, hey, I'm the captain of the defense, that I can relax a little bit. But the dude, like literally, I haven't asked him yet to talk because he comes off looking like he's going to do a clothesline. Like the dude is built like a mega power, and he comes off like the way he walks, like he's stewing, like he's ready to, stone cold stun somebody as he's walking to the sideline. So we'll see. He talked to Brad Galley on Wednesday. I'm looking forward to seeing what he said to him, but you can see the dude is serious. But like I said, first 4 days, it's acclimating. It's still like mini camp and OTAs. They're in their shorts and they're running around. It favors the offense, because the defense is not the defense is not hitting, but they are. You can tell like who can recognize the play, who adapts well. And on a day like Wednesday, it was good to see because Tuesday the offense kicked ass. They just were in rhythm. Wednesday, the defense stepped it up a little bit, tipped some more balls, pressured the quarterback a lot more. And it's a football team that right now looks a lot more talented because there's a lot of talent at different spots. Aiden, you can see Kirby Joseph picking off Jared Goff. He's got swagger. I like what I'm seeing from Gibbs and Montgomery. And I like the fact that you got this star in Amon-Ra St. Brown that I think can do a lot of great things. And even though we talk about him a lot, he's still kind of underrated. Like he can be a guy that gets 15 catches a game and that can be the guy that nobody in the league can guard.
Are you starting to see, there was a report that came out where Dan Campbell basically talked about these early days of training camp. Are you starting to see the guys get better each and every day? Just little subtle differences from Monday to Tuesday, Tuesday to Wednesday, Wednesday to Thursday. Are you starting to see them kind of pick things up a little bit more, start to operate a little bit faster and a little bit more efficiently?
Yes, for sure. Obviously, Ben Johnson likes tempo. You can see that on Tuesday was just their best day. It was crisp, and then obviously the defense was not happy, and they obviously were challenged to do a lot more. And on Wednesday, they got their hands up a lot more. They forced Goff and Sudfeld to scramble a lot more. They were into it. Their coverage was a little bit tighter. So different days, different things emerge. So yes, of course, I think every single day when they work on stuff, right now it's more, and here's the interesting part is they install stuff the day before and then they come out and they work on it, different situations, and then they go back and evaluate with a couple hour meetings and review the film and everything. But Goff looks really good, crisp, and he understands exactly what he needs to do to check into what he needs to based on what he sees from the defense. And I think that's something that is something to talk about is that Jared Goff and Ben Johnson, they're on a wavelength. They're on what they need to be. So Jared knows what Ben Johnson is thinking. And Ben Johnson's interesting. He talked to the media on Wednesday, and he said defense's job is to pose a problem, whether it be in zone or man coverage. And our job as an offense is to answer the problem and make the play. And Jared now sees a lot more of what Aaron Glenn's trying to do, and he's able to make the right check so that he can either dump it down or to find the hot read or to find the spot in the defense that's going to be soft. And it seems a lot easier. It's a lot crisper. And Jared launched a deep ball to Khalif Raymond that was 50 yards, nice, no wobble. And that was confidence. And it's you see what talent and what working in a scheme for another few months can do for players. And then on the defensive side, absolutely. You see Alex Anzalone, you see Malcolm Rodriguez knowing where they got to be. And like I said, I can't say enough good things about Kirby Joseph. It's just like he knows where he needs to be, and he knows where the running back, the wide receiver is going to set so that he can step in front and make the play. He's always around the football. And for what he's got going on, he's got a nice swagger to him. I like what he brings to the table. And but man, cause it's just hard to play. It's hard to place in the corner. It's hard to place a cornerback, man. It is so hard because the football field opens up in such a nice way based on Ben Johnson's scheme. There's always going to be a nice running back in the flat, kind of open, and because of the fact you got Sam Laporta, who's just taking up space, the way in which Ben Johnson schemes people open is crazy with his motions and the way in which the different guys and their timing of their routes. The guys are open, and it's great to see Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery and Sam Laporta making plays. And yes, they are getting better, and it's nice to see because I think Dan Campbell challenges them because I think they can see it. They can see we're close to doing something. And what I like is nobody can be comfortable because of the fact that, hey, if we need a player, we're going to bring in a Teddy Bridgewater when we think, Sudfeld's sitting there going, I've had a pretty good 4 days. And then the report on Monday is, and then Dan Campbell's like, oh yeah, you never hear a head coach go when the next day after a visit, the media asks, so what was that about bringing in Teddy Bridgewater? He's like, I'm not shying away. I think everybody knows I'm very fond of Teddy, and let's see what happens. I'm all for signing him. So that's
look. Let's jump into that because that was a guy that I targeted and that me and you talked about. We were both very high on bringing Teddy here. We talked about the backup quarterback position. We talked about it needing some work. Look, Nate Sudfeld is what Nate Sudfeld is. If there's a game or there's a stretch of games where Jared Goff goes down, you're probably not winning those games. And look, nothing against Nate Sudfeld. He does everything he can do. But there's a dramatic difference between a guy like Nate Sudfeld and a guy like Teddy Bridgewater. If Jared Goff goes down for 4, 5, 6 games, you could bring a guy in like Teddy Bridgewater, and there's a great possibility you're winning at least 3 of those games. There's a great possibility that you will be able to maybe not thrive, but you'll be able to survive those games where you lose your franchise quarterback. Because right now, Jared Goff is your franchise quarterback. Whether you like it or not, he's your franchise QB. So you bring a guy like Teddy Bridgewater in, you will be able to survive that extended stretch where you don't have him. A guy like Nate Sudfeld, you're going to be struggling to keep your head above water. And look, you might get lucky where you win maybe one of those games out of 4 or 5 or 6 of them, but nobody's expecting you to really do anything of consequence. A guy like Teddy Bridgewater comes in and he kind of calms things down, has the ability to go out there and play, has the ability to go out there and win you games. On top of that, he's really good in that quarterback room. That's another great set of eyes and another really good mind to have in that quarterback room. That's another guy who you can bring in and help mentor a guy like Hendon Hooker. And look, Hendon Hooker is redshirting this year. He's not playing. So it's basically Nate Sudfeld, and it's Nate Sudfeld. I feel a lot better about Teddy Bridgewater being in, and I think it's an awesome move that this organization had conversations with him, extended him a contract, brought him back in again, talked to him again. And look, at this point, they basically have said, like, look, ball's in Teddy's court. This is for him. If he wants it, he can come get it. I love it. I think it's fantastic. I hope he ends up becoming a Lion. I hope that's how this works out, because I think if he comes in, it does solidify that quarterback room. I think it removes another thing that could possibly go wrong in the season, right? It takes that off the table. Like if Jared Goff, by hook or by crook, happens to get hurt, we don't want that to happen. But if it does happen, I think we can feel confident that Teddy Bridgewater can come in and steer the ship, and you're going to be able to go out there and win football games. Conversely, I don't think Nate Sudfeld delivers that same confidence. I think if Teddy Bridgewater is able to sign, it bodes really well for this team. And I think it tells you that this organization is kind of reading the tea leaves, and it's reading the writing on the wall. Like, our time is now. The window is open. We are here to challenge, not just for the NFC. We are here to challenge in the playoffs, and we're here to make some noise. This isn't one of those things where we're just hoping to win. No, this team realizes that their time is now. We're going to get into press clippings here in a little bit, but this team understands what's being said about them. This team understands the expectation. This team understands that they are the favorite of the NFC North, and they understand what the lay of the land is with the NFC overall. I mean, really and truly, it's the Eagles, and if the 49ers can figure out their quarterback, and then after that, who is it? It's your Detroit Lions. Your Detroit Lions are that next team. And honestly, if you're going to Vegas and you're looking at odds, it's probably the Eagles and then it's the Lions, because we don't know what's going on with the quarterback position out in San Francisco. So I think it's awesome that they were able to bring him in. If he does sign, what does this tell you about this team?
Yeah, it's first of all, I like the message that it sends. In football, your seat is never comfortable. You got to prove it every day. Every single day, you have an off day. You're looking over your shoulder. They could find somebody. The team could be working out somebody. I love that mantra because, but at the same time, Sudfeld has looked comfortable in this game. He's finding the open receiver. He's checking it down. He's making the throw crisply. He's done well. So if they sign him, it doesn't necessarily mean. I would say that, look, if Hendon Hooker is on the PUP list and that means he doesn't take up a roster spot, now you keep 3 active quarterbacks. Adrian Martinez can be your practice squad guy. You keep 3 active quarterbacks every week. I wouldn't mind Nate Sudfeld as a number 3. The dude knows what he's doing. He's very comfortable with Jared Goff, and that's partly the case. Teddy Bridgewater is a completely different quarterback than Jared Goff, so they might see the game completely different. So it doesn't necessarily mean that Sudfeld's time in Detroit would be over, but it would definitely make the competition a lot better, I think, for Nate Sudfeld. But I look at it like this, and you said it. If something happens to Goff, they don't want the season to just fall apart. They're not in a tanking mode where they're like, okay, fine, screw it. Let's just lose every game. They feel like with Bridgewater, that they could come in and quickly acclimate and keep it moving forward, where the offense wouldn't look totally lost because of the weapons that you have. You do a lot more checkdowns. You do a lot more of runs and utilizing the offense, but Teddy Bridgewater can handle it, especially based on, I think that obviously the Lions love the fact that he's a grinder, especially with that devastating knee injury that he had, the freak way in which his injury kind of played out. So they love his mindset. They love his grit and what he's about. I don't know if it's going to work out because I think Teddy's looking for a situation he can play. So I think he's waiting maybe for an injury or waiting for a situation, maybe using the Lions as leverage against another team based on the money. But hey, it's always good to bring in guys. You know what I mean? It's always good to bring in guys. Always. It's never a bad thing. And I think it signals to everybody, cuz that they always realize that, okay, the backup is important. And if Goff goes down, Sudfeld is okay, but I think they feel a lot more comfortable with Bridgewater.
Yeah, and look, I agree with you. I think Teddy Bridgewater, that's what he's waiting for.
Yeah.
Look, training camp is rough. We've already talked about one guy going down with an injury or a possible injury. We've talked about Jameson Williams dealing with an injury.
Yeah.
So injuries happen as camp gets underway. I think Teddy's kind of waiting to see where all the pieces lie, and if there's a team that he can jump on and he can be a starting quarterback instead of being a backup quarterback. So I think that's where his head is at. Again, contracts out there. Hopefully he signs it. We'll see what happens. It's kind of one of those wait and see type of things. Look, we've talked a lot about injuries. Training camp, these things happen. Going into the year, this team went out. They signed a cornerback, Emmanuel Mosley, picked him up from San Francisco, dealing with a knee injury that took him out of last year. He's going to start the season on the PUP list. How concerning is that for you that this guy is targeted as being a starting cornerback? He's the guy who's supposed to start opposite of Cam Sutton, and he's basically missing the beginning of training camp. He's not out there able to participate. He's on the physically unable to participate list. And it's just one of those things where it's going to take some time before he can get back out there. How much of a concern is it for you with him, one, picking up the playbook, but two, just kind of getting acclimated and getting the live reps? Because it's almost over a half a year, maybe close to 3/4 of a year that he hasn't played. So he's got a little bit of catching up to do there. On top of that, new team, you want to get acclimated with everybody. So how concerning is it that he's not out there participating?
Well, I'm hoping, Dan Campbell said he'll be in the building back on Friday. It does mean, obviously, his injury situation is taking a little bit longer. Everybody heals differently. It sucks. I don't think he's going to be the starter day one. But if you get him week 3, week 4, that's not bad either. So I look at it and I say, I'm curious in regards to what he can bring to the table when he does get out there. I think that this is a good football player. I think that he can compete and will do some things. But right now he's behind the 8 ball. He's not out there. So we'll see what that looks like. But right now, just off of the first 4 days, it's Jerry Jacobs and it's Cam Sutton. Those are your two defensive backs that are going to start at cornerback. So that's how I look at it, and I say that when Emmanuel Mosley comes in, he's going to work to prove that he can handle business because he's going to get thrown into the fire. You're going to be guarding Amon-Ra. You're going to be guarding Denzel Mims, the new wideout. That's kind of exciting, and I think that it's going to be tough to come in and just handle business right away. And those injuries are tough, man. And the cornerback position, like we said, friends don't let friends play corner, and they don't let them play running back. You make sure all your friends play the quarterback spot so they can get paid $50 million if they're worth a damn, or right tackle, left tackle, so they can make over $115 million protecting the quarterback. It's crazy, man. That position, defensive back, is tough, man. These receivers, they're experts at crisply getting in and out of routes, and done right in the way Ben Johnson does things, one guy's going to be open. It's just the way it is, and it's going to be tough. But that's why tackling is key, and that's why you want to, the real thing that's going to be for most teams is bend, don't break. Give up field goals, not touchdowns. And if you score touchdowns and they scored field goals, you're going to win a lot of games. So that's what it is. Basically, it's like just hold the fort. Don't collapse. Don't put us down 14-0 before we have a chance to get in the game. But Emmanuel Mosley, I'm not concerned yet. Let's see Friday. He gets in the building. What the next plan will be. We'll have a lot more regarding Mosley in the next week or two to see what happens. But, Cuz, were you excited? Yeah. Were you excited when you heard the news about Denzel Mims?
Yeah, so when that broke, obviously late at night, and I was like, all right. So like, I remember Denzel Mims, right? I remember a couple years ago when we were looking at drafting possibly a wide receiver, trying to figure out a guy. He was highly touted.
Yeah.
So I do a little bit of research. I'm like, why didn't it work out with the Jets? What kind of went on there? It was kind of a mess with New York. So look, I'm excited for what he brings to the table. This is a guy who has speed. This is a guy who, when he was in college, he had really good hands. So I'm assuming that you just don't lose those. You just don't forget those. The big concern is going to be picking up that playbook and being able to do what's asked of him. Here's the deal. If anything, going out and basically picking him up for a song. I love what they gave up for him. It was basically nothing. I think it was absolutely great the way Brad Holmes was able to go and facilitate this trade. So I think it's fantastic. If anything, right? If Jameson Williams comes back, so the best case scenario, Jameson Williams comes back and he's everything we hope he is, and then you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. Denzel Mims is going to fit in perfectly. You've got a trifecta of wide receivers that are absolutely lethal. At worst, it just doesn't necessarily work out. You didn't lose anything. You know, he doesn't make the 53-man roster. And what'd you give up? You didn't give up anything. What'd you get in return? You got a 7th-round pick. I think it works out just fine for Detroit. I think it was a very shrewd move by Brad Holmes and by this front office staff. The hope is this works out better than Trinity Benson did, because that was the last wide receiver that Brad Holmes traded for. And Trinity Benson just didn't work out, whether it was injuries, whether it was just where he was at on the depth chart. It just didn't work out. So I'm excited for this. I want to see what he brings to the table. It sounds like him and Jared Goff already have a little bit of a rapport. This sounds like a guy very similar to Amon-Ra St. Brown, a chip on the shoulder, wants to go out there and wants to basically rub it in the Jets' face, wants to show them that they gave up on him and that they did him wrong. And I love that. I love getting angry players who have something to prove. So I'm excited for him. I think he can be a bit of a difference as far as a position for wide receiver. So I'm excited for what he brings to the table. What about you?
Yeah, I think his size and speed, you can't beat that. Now, if you can understand the system, it's tough. I thought Wednesday was a little bit of a step back for Mims because of the fact that it's tough because the defense makes adjustments and they throw him off his route a little bit, and a couple things that, it's hard to understand exactly where a quarterback wants to be. So on the field, it's going to take time, but can't teach size. You can't teach the fact that he can position himself in a spot where another corner can't be. I think it's going to work. I did a early 53-man projection on Wednesday, and I have him making the team, and I think that he's going to be a stellar addition, especially when you got Sam Laporta, who can, you pick your poison. It's just going to be great because it's going to be good. The offense, I don't know if it's going to be top 5, but it's going to be top 10, and they're going to score a lot of points. Pick your poison. Oh, you try to stop Gibbs? Have a little Montgomery. You try and stop Amon-Ra St. Brown? Have a little Laporta. You lock up Laporta with your zone defense? Fine. Here's a little bit of Denzel Mims and Jameson Williams when he gets back. Look, Jared Goff hit the jackpot when Brad Holmes came here because Brad Holmes said, look, we owe you a solid. You took the bullet for us, and you basically died on the field that first year, and you were a pro about it. You didn't complain. You didn't come to my office and cry and scream and yell and demand a trade and say, what the hell? Brad Holmes said it. If you watch his podcast, he didn't diss him, but he's like, we didn't have many weapons for Jared that first year. He's like, we had Terrell Williams and Brett Perriman, and he almost laughed. He almost like subconsciously let it out and is like, well, it just didn't work out with those guys. And Jared had a new offensive coordinator, and they had to move on from Anthony Lynn because all he wanted to do was run the ball. And Goff has been nothing but a professional, and that's what everybody loves about him is that he just goes with the flow. Nothing really rattles him. He just goes on to the next throw. He throws a pick, and then the next throw is going to be fine. He's kind of mastered the mental side of the quarterback position. Now everyone's going to wait to see what can he do in the second year. But Denzel Mims, guys, in a good system with support, with a lot to prove, and because literally, if he doesn't make the roster, there's no deal. If he doesn't make the roster, there's no picks that exchange hands. So you got a second-round pick for nothing, and that's how you can build a roster. When you can feature Amon-Ra St. Brown, Denzel Mims, Jamison Williams and Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond, you got yourself the makings of a nice, solid offensive unit that can do some stuff.
Yeah, and look, I think with this offense, the way it's constructed, it's almost video game-esque, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like they went to, like, they're playing Madden, and they're like, let's craft the most lethal offense we can think of, right? And you've got only so many bonus points you can do things with. Look, you already got a really good offensive line, and you can basically put almost anybody behind it, and they're going to run, and they're going to do a ton of great things from the running back position. Now you're just adding wide receivers and guys who should be just daggers out there. So you got to love it. I mean, offensively, this team looks absolutely ridiculous right now. So the hope is that the defense comes along. A lot of moves made in free agency to kind of bolster that. Again, sounds like from what you're saying, offense is always ahead of the defense, especially in training camp. But the defense is responding, and that's what you want to see. That's what you want to hear coming out of camp. So I have no concerns with this defense getting better and kind of building on where they were at last year. So that's all very good. And because of that, there's a ton of hype. There's a ton of hype around this team. There's a lot of national reports. There's a lot of local reports. There's a bunch where, as Dan Campbell says, the hype train is running, and he's not shying away from it. And he had a message to the team basically saying, stay focused at the job at hand and do the work. I want to get your reaction to this, because I like that Dan Campbell isn't shying away from the fact that this team is talked about all the time. I mean, the other day you had Amon-Ra St. Brown on ESPN on SportsCenter. For most of this offseason, you've had a ton of players basically rotating in a chair on Good Morning Football. You've got national pundits talking about how this team is going to be lethal. USA Today just released an article where they gave predictions for all the NFL teams, and Detroit is winning the NFC North at I think it was 11 and 6.
Yes,
and everybody else was 7 and 10 in the division. So I mean, there is a ton of stuff out there, and Dan Campbell's like, yeah, we hear it, we see it, but we're not really worried about it. We haven't even done anything yet. We got to go keep doing the job. So what are your thoughts on Dan Campbell, one, acknowledging it, and two, just addressing it, like early on in camp too? Like, this wasn't one of those things that just kind of got drug out. He addressed it very early on this week.
Yeah, he said that it was his biggest worry was the hype train. Felt like it's something that he doesn't want to become a concern. He doesn't want something where they read their own press clippings and stuff like that. But here's my thing. The next step, you've learned how to win football games. Clearly, you won 8 of 10. I think the next step is develop that swagger where, and I'm, like I said, I'm biased in that over the spring, I read Jimmy Johnson's book, and he took a different approach. And he says, look, a lot of coaches don't want to put the pressure on their team publicly and say we're good. I think Dan Campbell had missed an opportunity. Look, here's the thing. And remember, guys, Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell handpick who they want. They want gritty players. They want football players that love the game, that go home to the hotel, take an hour break, and get back in the books. Jack Campbell doesn't even have social media, doesn't even know that I got a video with him getting tackled by his fiance that got over 1.5 million views. Probably doesn't even know that. I'll say this. This football team was handcrafted for the fit that they have. So why not come out and say, we're a good football team, and this football team is going to win playoff games. I have no doubt about it. And then you say, I have no doubt if we do the work and if they do what I know they're capable of because of the trust I have in who we picked, I'm going to celebrate this year. I think this is going to be my favorite year covering the NFL. He should have said that. And Jimmy Johnson had no problem. His book is so good. It's called Swagger. Read it. It's really great. He's like, he walks into Miami as the head coach. He's like, oh, we're winning rings. He's like, we're winning rings here. And he walks into Dallas the same way. He's like, we're going to win. And my favorite part of the book was it was a Super Bowl, and he walks up to Ralph Wilson of the Bills in one of the games, and he's like, we're going to kick your ass, and I think you know it. And he walked right off. It was great. And he's like, because he believed in everything that he built and the system, and he's like, why would I put negativity in the air? He's like, why would I put that we're not going to have success? He's like, I believed it. I manifested. And I think the Lions are almost maybe one more year away, but I think Dan Campbell could have came out and said, this football team can compete with everybody. I think we're going to have a lot of success. Everything that we've done has gone to form, and I trust these football players are not going to let me down. I want to celebrate some playoff wins in Detroit. We all deserve it. I mean, it's the same message, just saying it a little bit more positive. Him saying he's worried about the hype train, you think it's going to stop? That's the point that you think. Look, I saw a picture of Laporta jumping 10 feet in the air. What do you think I wrote? Freak athlete. That's the definition of, and when things are great, it's really great. When things are bad, it's really bad. So I just think that it was kind of a weird, in my mind, it was a weird call to action to his football team because I think his football players do put in the work. You think Aiden Hutchinson is going to, stop working hard because of the fact that all Lions writes that he's number 88 ranked player in the National Football League and does a little, extra hype? No. Amon-Ra St. Brown, literally, I don't know what he's finding that's negative because everything's been positive about that dude. That dude, any chance he gets is like, I see the stuff you guys write. And it just makes me want to prove you guys wrong. So I'm sure he probably was. I'm sure what he was referencing, and he didn't say it publicly, that ESPN put him as an honorable mention or didn't put him as a top 10 wide receiver. I'm sure that's what it was. But I just think the football team doesn't need to be told by the head coach to work hard. You do that in practice. You don't work hard, you chew their ass out. They don't work hard, you send a message, this guy's out on the next bus ticket out of here. So I think now.
See, I love it, man. I think it's fantastic because
you say what you're going to
think it's fantastic because
do it.
Well, I love it. I love it because he's letting them know, like, look, you guys haven't done shit this year. Like every season's a new season. Every season starts over. I mean, as pumped up as we are, we're basically talking about stuff from last year and we're extrapolating it to this year. And Dan Campbell's saying it doesn't work like that. You have to show up every day and you've got to put the hard hat on and you got to go do the work. So as much as everybody's talking about you and as much as everybody's saying all these grand things about you, stay focused and do the job. Go out there, put your hard hat on, buckle up, and let's get to work. Let's get to the task at hand, and that is getting better each and every day. I love it, man. I think it's great. I think it shows a real sense of self-awareness and just awareness about your team. Like there's no point in kind of running from it, right? So he just comes out and he addresses it immediately. Basically, day one says, look, I know what everybody's writing. I know what everybody is saying. I know what the expectations are. All these guys know it. But you know what? The job is to stay focused and go do the job. That's it. Do the job at hand, get better every day, and just keep working and keep building. It's basically, like I say, Lego blocks. You just got to build and build and build and build, and eventually you'll get your spaceship. And hopefully that spaceship takes us to a playoff win, an NFC North championship, and a Super Bowl maybe. I don't know. I'm just saying. But, it's what it is. I love the fact that he addressed it. I think it is fantastic that he addressed it.
Yeah, it is. Of course. I think he is traditional. He doesn't want, the old school model of, hey, we haven't done anything yet. But at the same time, they have done some things. It's not like they're completely irrelevant. I think that that's a football team that deserves a little bit of credit for the things that they were able to do in regards to winning 8 out of 10. That's not easy to do. That's not an easy feat to accomplish. And I think that when you saw the swagger on this football team, it goes to show you that this is a football team that, I think behind the scenes has that quiet confidence that we can do some things. And they know that people they know that they're a football team that hasn't done anything. They got within one game of the playoffs and they tasted it. So I don't see the layup. I don't see press clippings being the downfall of this team. What I see being the downfall of the team is the potential, not enough talent on defense, not having just one less piece along the defensive line or offensive line that you need to be successful. I think it's more the talent than it is the press clippings. But we'll see.
Do you think this team goes out and still makes a move to bring somebody in? Yeah. We talked about the defensive line a lot this year. Do you think that this team goes out and makes one more move like that? I mean, you've already seen them bring in a wide receiver. You've seen them try to address the quarterback room. I think defensive line is the pressing need. Do you think they go out and make that one more move and bring somebody in?
Man, it's crazy. I would have done a pros and cons of trading for Chris Jones, but I don't see him worth 30. The dude wants $30 million a year at 29. If he was 26, I'd consider it. But I think Kansas City will get that done. They did a side by side of what the team looks like when he's not there, and oh my God, did Denver carve up the Chiefs defense when he wasn't in, and when he's there, dude just clogs up the middle. I wonder what Ali McNeil can do, but I just think I don't know if they're going to make another move in terms of the interior of the defensive line. Maybe it might be Bridgewater, maybe it might be a depth piece on the offensive line, But I don't know. I'm not so certain yet that a move needs to be made just based on the talent level. I like what I see so far in regards to giving this team a shot, at least through the first 3-4 games. I don't know. I don't, wide receiver is good. Maybe a veteran linebacker, but I think they got a lot of young pieces there. Secondary, if CJ's out for a longer period of time, might be worth it. But they got a lot of young players. I think that they like what they've got from 53 down to 90. They like what they got. They have a couple pieces at every spot to compete. So I don't know from the outside that's going to happen, barring any injuries.
I think that they go out and they add somebody. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that person will be as impactful as we maybe want them to be. But I do believe that they go out and they do address that. Like you can already see, Brad Holmes is not done tinkering with this with this lineup. He's not done tinkering with this team yet. So you see they've tried to address, like we said, the quarterback room. They've added a wide receiver. So I'm expecting one more move before the season gets underway. I don't know if it'll be as big or as impactful as a guy like Teddy Bridgewater would be to that quarterback room. And I don't know if it'll pay immediate dividends like a guy like Denzel Mims would to that wide receiving room and to that offense. But I think that they go out and they add somebody else who helps bolster it. I'm just hoping it's not necessarily a depth guy, a guy who's the third guy in. You know what I'm saying? I'm hoping it's somebody who can actually play a lot of meaningful downs and get some production out of them. But I think that this team is still a work in progress, and this will not be the finished product. I think going into the season, there's going to be a few more additions that are made.
Nice. So far, what have you made of the rookies? I know you're reading about Sam Laporta's making plays. Brian Branch, I think, has been the rookie that stood out, even though he missed practice on Wednesday. I think Jack Campbell's the real deal. Jameer Gibbs, a little bit slower in regards to picking up everything. Rookie mistakes in terms of alignment, some drops in individual drills. It's a tough thing, man. These coaches, they give, and they do it on purpose to just basically give the players so much on their plate that when it comes to the game, it feels a little bit slower. But, man, you can tell the difference between a second-year player like Malcolm Rodriguez and Jack Campbell in terms of comfortableness, just knowing everything. And it's interesting. We talked to Sam Laporta, and so I get there about 7:30 a.m. every morning, and I think that's when the players typically arrive because practice is at 8:30. So between 7 and probably 8, the players arrive. Sam said that they stay until 7:30 at night. And then he's got to go to a hotel. He doesn't have a place yet. A lot of the players stay at the team hotel, and he basically gives himself an hour to decompress. From like 7:45 to 8:45, he decompresses, and then he's got to go through the next day's installs in terms of what they want to do. Can you imagine? It literally, and I can see why Brad Holmes would want these type of players. Literally, when you start football and you're a rookie, it's all football. You get maybe an hour and a half of the day to live your life, and then it's all, where do you need to be, your routes, your schedule, the checks, the calls, what's going to be run the next day. It's a lot. And I was just like, man, that's immersive. I like football, but I like the other aspects of the stuff that I like too. I don't know if I could do football 24/7 like these guys got to, man. It was tough. But and especially being a rookie, so it does give you a little bit more fondness of how tough it is to adapt. And then when you see a guy like Sam Laporta make plays, it gives you that much more credit to say, wow, given everything that you got going on and you're still making plays and getting first team reps, don't sleep on Antoine Green. The guy's making plays, big body. And it was real interesting what Ben Johnson said Wednesday. He said, the guy's got 4.4 speed. We need him to play that way each and every rep. Meaning they don't want a guy that just takes a rep off and doesn't go full speed. They want him to go, every single rep, get open, and make plays. So it's going to be fun to see. Guys, Friday, pads come on, and you're going to start to see hits. You're going to start to see the leverage that Broderick Martin can put on. You're going to start to see Aiden Hutchinson versus Brock Wright or Aiden Hutchinson versus Laporta. You're going to have an opportunity to see the Cam Sutton versus Jamison Williams when he gets back on the field. Pads are when it's really when everything starts. It's when you'll get more conclusive statements from the coaching staff. We'll get more understanding of everything going on. We'll start to see those that get it versus those that don't. They got a day off today as hopefully they relax and get everything done. But when the pads come on, football's in the air because the crack of the pads is really spectacular, and it'll be fun to see. But, man, cause training camp, you're right. There is a lot of buzz about the Lions. There's people wondering, about how everything's going on. And I respect a lot of these players. They're open, they're honest. Even David Montgomery was willing to talk to me about running backs and feeling like some of them are undervalued and things like that, and the league news and stuff like that. So you don't get too many of the guys turning down interviews, which is a good thing. And there are a lot of good personalities, a lot of good energy. Hell, Frank Ragnow was like, maybe made a mistake in terms of telling you guys my foot's inoperable. I'm feeling okay. Maybe trying to calm down the panic of everybody that was tripping. So right now, in terms of how everything's going, so far so good through the first week, and I can't wait till it ramps up. And I'm curious. I'm very interested, very intrigued by your comment. I think it's tough because the Chiefs haven't lost an opener in like several years. I just think it's tough. The opening day, maybe you get the hangover, maybe that little break that they get in the rings will cause a little bit of a disruption. But man, it's going to be tough to stop. But maybe the Kadarius Toney injury is something. Maybe they'll be a little bit down, but I just think it's going to be tough to go to Arrowhead on the opening night and to stop them. I think it's going to be tough, cuz it's going to be a tough ask.
As long as that team shows up ready to fight and ready to punch people in the face, I think they've got a great shot at it.
Okay, I can't wait. I'll be there. I'm going to go. I'm going to go to Kansas City, my first road trip. Hopefully I think they'll approve it, but it's a nationally televised audience game, so I'm going to try to make the drive. I'm not flying because the tickets are ridiculously overpriced, so I'm going to try to make the drive and make the trip, get my first taste of Kansas City barbecue. Hopefully there is a home playoff game because everyone knows I'm deathly afraid of flying. I don't want to experience it. But that what that means, because it's going to be a road game against the 49ers or Seattle. And I was like, fuck, playoffs, you got to cover it. But we'll see how it all shakes out. But hopefully we manifest good news. And, man, that was a great hour talking ball, talking football. Man, we really could talk 4 hours just in terms of the coaching staff, the roster, just what it's like down there. Man, it's great. I will share, too, though. I got my hand slapped a little bit. So there's a rule. But I didn't violate it too bad. There is a rule that says that you can't put out any tweets the second you step foot out on the football field. So when the news came about C.J. Gardner-Johnson, I was looking around. I'm like, okay, nobody's tweeting it. So because there's so many rules, it's hard to remember them all, guys. So I'm not like some rebel. It's hard to remember. Okay, I was like, okay, yeah, you can't post. The part that stuck with me is no live tweeting about the practice. Like you can't say, here's this play, here's this play, here's this play. I can't do that, guys. And I know the videos are boring, but that's the window we're allowed to shoot in. We're only allowed to shoot when they're with their individual groups. I can't show you the red zone when they're making their checks and calls, and I can't show you that. I can only show you when they're basically running individual drills in 5 minutes. So I apologize. It's not that interesting, but it just shows you I'm there. But so I'm looking around. I'm like, okay, I know I can't say that C.J. Johnson's hurt, but I can maybe put out a tweet that something's coming so I can alert people or people will know what that means. So I threw out the eye emoji and I tweeted it. 40 seconds later, PR comes and goes, John, you can't tweet from the field. I'm going to need you to take that down. I'm like, oh, sorry. I'm like, the eye emoji? Like, you can't tweet from the field. I'm like, okay. And they didn't say nothing about it. And I was like, oh, thank God I didn't put like, oh, big news. I'm like, the whole thing. So then I look back at the policy. No social media posts during practice. So I was, I think, the first violator this year, but I'm sure it happens quite a bit. But I'm not going to lie. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. And I just have to alert people that news is coming. And I can't believe, because there literally are now, just real fast, just a little bit on the inside. It is fun to cover the team, but it's not as fun to compete. And here's why. Part of the competition is to see how you do against the other sites and stuff like that. But now every new site that opens up has a video player that uses my videos. You know what I mean? So if you see all these new LionsFan.com or Lions123, A to Z Sports, LionLover12345.com, they all need revenue, and one way to get revenue is a universal video player. Well, SI has a great relationship with them, so basically I can't bite the hand that feeds me, and so the success of all these other sites is also in tune with my success, so it's not as fun to compete because I need them all to succeed. So I'm like, oh, it took a little bit of the juice out, but I know I'm in the mix. I know my stuff ranks high. When I write stuff, people debate it or read it, and I think the blessing cause is that people, and I'll say this too, real fast before we get out of here, because the newspapers are like 5 years behind podcasting. I was listening to what these guys were talking about podcasts, and I'm like, oh my God, you guys are now talking about trying to sell podcasts? I'm like, you guys are a decade behind. I told Andrea, I'm like, man, I'm so happy I got into this doing podcasts. They are a decade behind trying to figure out how to monetize and do the podcast in the right way and how to prioritize it and do it. I'm like, wow, I was so shocked at what I was listening to. And I was just thankful that we learned it and got ahead of it before everybody else did. And the opportunities that are there to cover the Lions with podcasts and do this with the Detroit Sports Podcast and the opportunities, because you're not going to believe it. Cameron, who does our videos, I thought he was late. I saw that the Detroit Sports Nation got a credential. I'm going to SummerSlam with my daughter because she loves wrestling. But he's like, can I try with the podcast to get to take pictures? I'm like, if you give them to me and let me post them. I'm like, sure, go ahead, ask. So he did, and WWE said, yeah, we'll consider it. He might be maybe ringside taking pictures of SummerSlam so we can post it on our Twitter page. So that's cool. Yeah, that's very cool for him. And I love the fact that people have used this platform to bounce off and get a lot of stuff on their resume and to have WWE letting a photographer take pictures for Detroit Sports Podcast. I was like, hell yeah, do it. I thought we were late. I didn't even think to apply for a credential because I just wanted to go experience it as a fan. So it's great that podcasts are recognized a lot more when events are in town. We're not as looked at as the dredge of society. And to finish, Woody from Fox 2 has said, I appreciate you guys' efforts and listens to the podcast, listens to the videos and stuff like that. So people are aware of what we're doing and see us doing our thing. So I'm very proud of that. And don't feel, outside of tweeting during practice, don't feel like the outsider anymore. And the more we do it, the more I realize all we wanted to do was be in the mix. And now we're firmly in the mix. And it's great to see. And I love popping up a website when they pop up with line stuff. And then there's our videos. And I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. Cuz that was a great hour. Thank you. You killed the hour with the thunderstorm. It looks like we're going to survive the tornado. It looks like these weather people lied again. So far, I'm not seeing anything but drizzle out here on Wednesday evening. But we'll see if everybody survives Death Storm 2023. Come back next week for the latest edition of Doc and Jock.